Hey there, welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph and I am the host of this show, a show that's dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. Okay, today is our series which features rock musicians who have thrilled us but have since passed on. And this is episode number 25 from 1988. And I apologize ahead of time, or actually, I apologize now for it being released so late in the afternoon. There's been a lot of stuff going on, so I've been caught up in stuff, but I did get the video ready and it's ready to go now, and so we're going to do it here. So the remaining ones this week, which I believe will be Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, will all come out at 9 a.m. like normal, Eastern Standard Time, of course. So welcome. And so today we're doing 1988, as I said. Two musicians, one of which I probably have a lot more interest in because they were a member at one point of one of my group of seven. The other guy, I will be honest, I really didn't like him much and really didn't care to do him. However, based on all the musicians who died this year, I just thought there's no way you can leave this guy out. He's been too impactful, and so I'm going to do my study. And I will say that after having done all the research on him and stuff like that, I have a lot more respect for him and the stuff that he's accomplished and done as basically as a solo artist, but having been part of a couple bands as well. So I wanted to say that up front, that he does have my respect. I still don't necessarily like his music, but I do give respect to him. So anyways, the number one guy we'll start with, because again, it's chronologically, he passed first, so I'm going to do him first, and that's John Kiriluski of Styx, a band that is among my group of seven, one of my favorite bands of all time. And John had an impact on that because he was part of their first 5 albums, the 4 wooden nickel ones, and then the stellar Equinox, which really didn't get a lot of push on it, because I think if it had, it would have done much better than it did initially, based on everything I've seen. It's definitely my number 2 favorite Styx album of all time, and it wasn't always that case. It was, at one point, it was fairly far down there, but listened to it a lot more in the last half dozen years, and it's become one of my favorite Styx albums. Okay, so we're going to start with John. Born October 3rd, 1950 in Chicago, Illinois, of course, and he died February the 13th, 1988 at the age of 37, also in Chicago, Illinois. Okay, music was rock, progressive rock, and hard rock, pretty much Styx. His instruments, guitar, and he did do some lead vocals on some of the earlier Styx stuff. I think he might have done a co-lead vocal on the Equinox album, which was his last album with the group. Okay, so his years active were 1968 to 1975. Okay, so the first group that he joined was TW4 with John and Chuck Panozzo and Dennis DeYoung. This group eventually, of course, would evolve in 1972 to Styx, which is what they are today, of course. He played guitar and sang lead vocals on some tracks, especially on the wooden nickel stuff. He was more active there, but he did do some stuff on the Equinox album, which, as I've already stated, should have done much better than it did. The label at the time, and I believe this to be true, the label at the time focused on basically on Peter Frampton and didn't give them the kind of due that they deserved, and the album suffered for that, which is unfortunate because I think it's a great album. Okay, what else can we say about him? Okay, his career with Styx was about 5 years long, playing again on all the wooden nickel albums, and then, but he was always at odds with a lot of the people in the band. He tended to take the negative approach, I guess, and or at least a different approach from the other 4, and so he would often be outvoted and stuff, and I think he didn't have a ton of confidence in his guitar playing ability. I don't know if his ability was actually weak, but I think that he just didn't have any confidence in it. And so it came to a head at some point at the end of once the album was recorded and they were touring. Him and Dennis DeYoung had a bit of a confrontation, and he told Dennis DeYoung, well, if you don't like it, I'll quit. And it's not like he hadn't done this before. Apparently he'd done this quite often, and they just held him to it this time and kept it and wouldn't let him back. So he left, and of course, the rest is kind of history. Tommy Shaw came in, and the band exploded after that, right? So, but when he went back to Chicago, he took up a job as a guitar teacher. He also did play once in a while with local bands in the area. But basically, he spent the last 13 years of his life teaching guitar in the Chicago area. And then, unfortunately, he had a brain aneurysm on, of course, February the 13th, 1988, and he died at the age of 37, far too young to go, and never really realized, I think, that if he could have stuck it out, the band might have done much better, but it's hard to say. Obviously, Tommy Shaw has contributed a lot of stuff to Styx over the years, and is pretty much the main focus nowadays with Styx. He's the main guy, I think, with Dennis being out of the picture and all. So, so there you have it, John Curulewski. I didn't mind his guitar playing. I thought he was decent enough, but for some reason he just didn't have the confidence in his ability. So, anyways, I wanted to bring this up because he's a member of Styx, and anybody a member of Styx is a favorite of mine. So I like them, and so there we go. So the number 2 guy was a guy, of course, I've already talked about, that I really didn't care much for his music, and I think it's because he has some country influence in him, and I just see him as a bit of a greaser, and I don't know, not really a nice thing to say about the guy, but I just never liked his music, and I think some of the covers done by his stuff have been done better, you know. But at any rate, he is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's in Memphis Hall of Fame, I believe, in the Writers Hall of Fame. So I'm alone in this category, and many people love him, right? So I figured I had to give him his due today. And we're talking about, of course, about Roy Orbison. I know there's people out there saying, how could you not like Roy Orbison? You know, well, I'm sorry. I don't love everybody that everybody else loves. He wasn't one of my favorites. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the style of his music or the sound of his voice or his overall style that just didn't gel with me. However, I do give him 100% respect. He was a hard worker. I suffered some tragedies, of course, unfortunately for him, and died young. In my opinion, he's 52, so that means he was younger than me. That's young. So, anyways, we'll go through his statistics. He was born April 23rd, 1936, in Vernon, Texas. Died December 6, 1988, at the age of 52, in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Excuse me. His music pretty much was rock, pop, country, and he did start out playing some rockabilly early on as well. Of course, he was a vocalist. That's what he's most noted for, I think. But he didn't start out that way. He was a very shy individual, so guitar and harmonica were 2 other instruments that he also played. He was active from 1953 to 1988. So he was about 17 when he started getting into music in a big way. Okay, I have lots of notes on him. I'll try to elaborate a bit on the notes I've made. His first guitar he got at the age of 6. His family bought it for him. He developed an interest in country music early on. That was his early influence. And that makes sense. He was living in the southern belt where country music is bigger than it is in the northern belt, of course. He was a big fan of Lefty Frizzle, which was his favorite at the time, and so much so that when he I think he liked, apparently liked the slurred syllables that Lefty would use when he sang. And he kind of developed this a little bit in his own music later. But he liked him so much that when the Wilburys formed much later, he took on the name Lefty Wilbury to honor his hero, right? He also he formed a kind of a western, country western type band called the Wink Westerners at that period of time when he was still fairly new in the music. And he liked, and they used to play, pretty much they played country staples, and they liked Glenn Miller. They played him as well. And then they also had a radio show, which I guess they would appear on and play some stuff that they, some cover stuff. His friend, he was actually going to, I think he was going to college at this time, and he had taken something that would lead to working in the mineral rock field, where he thought if this music industry didn't work out for him, that's what he would do. However, his friend Pat Boone, another notable singer, got a contract and this fired him up to do better. Once they at one point they switched their name to the Teen Kings, and they signed a record label contract with Sun Records. Sorry, I couldn't remember the name of the record company. And the song that they first recorded was Ooby Dooby, which they had taken from another artist and redid and played as their own song. It was kind of a semi-hit, I guess. What happened with the band was, in 1956, they were singing on Sun Records, and there was a lot of kind of bickering between writing credits and, what do they call it? When they get money for it, I can't think of the name of it. Anyways, basically, it was who was getting the money for the credits and who actually should have gotten credits. There were arguments over that, so the band kind of disintegrated and they split up, and they moved on to different venues. But he wanted to sing on his own, so he tried on his own, and Jack Clement, who I guess was the producer at the time, or the record label guy, said that he really didn't have the kind of voice that would ever get him to singing ballads or anything like that. So he wasn't, they just basically told me he didn't have what it takes. And to be fair to Jack Clement, maybe at this period in time, because he was shy and because he was kind of different and back and had a high voice and was kind of stayed back a bit, maybe he gave the impression that he couldn't do it. But that, of course, would change. After recording the song Claudette as his own, he sold the rights to it. Well, didn't sell the rights to it, but allowed the Everly Brothers to record it as well, and they put it on the B side of their hit single, which was the Dream. What's the name of that song? It's a stupid name, the way they wrote it. I can't remember. It's in my notes here, but I don't see it. Okay, yeah, they recorded it as a B-side on All I Have to Do Is Dream. I just think of it as Dream, but that's what they called it. Anyways, so it was the B-side of that, and did okay for them. He stopped recording around this time and stopped writing pretty much altogether for about 6 or 7 months, and the record label, I guess, got tired of that, kind of let him go, which is, I think, what he wanted. He wasn't really happy at Sun Records. They weren't really doing much for him and just felt like he could do better. So he went on, and after that he was playing in a concert, and he pitched one of his songs to Elvis Presley and the Everly Brothers, and I think it was the Only the Lonely. That was the one. He pitched that song to them, and they both didn't really want to do it, so he did it on his own. And it did great. It went to number 2 on the Billboard Top 100 at the time, and became a big he became a star overnight just from this one song. I mean, that was not really that uncommon in the 1950s to have this happen. You know, big hit, big song, big overnight success. So he then started recording with another label as well. So at this time, he also had, I can't remember, I didn't write the label down, I can't remember the name. I think it was, it might come up later. I might remember it after. But anyways, he went on and he wrote several more impactful songs. It's like a series of hits, sort of. Some doing better than others, but all doing pretty well. And then he went, when he was, I think it was in the series of hits, I think he played, he did, in the early part of the 1960s, he played on a tour with the Beatles. And the Beatles were given, of course, the part of playing the major band, the top billing, and he was second billing, which was, I guess, a little bit different since he was fairly well known at the time and they were still just up and coming. But he even went as far as to say, who are the Beatles? And then that was the famous quote, John Lennon turned around and says, I'm the Beatles, I'm one of the Beatles. So anyways, he did one particular concert where he was out there singing, and he just basically, if you've ever seen Roy Orbison, and I can completely understand what they're talking about here when they said he just stands there and plays. Doesn't do anything, doesn't move. Kind of reminds me of John Entwistle that way, just stands there and plays. And sings, of course. And he did one hit after another, and they just kept calling him back for encores and encores, and they got to about the 12th or 13th encore. The Beatles got tired of that. It would let him go back on the stage, so then they came out and did their thing. So, but he was really popular at that point in time, with at least a crowd anyways. And he at that point in time was the only American rock star to have a #1 hit in both the UK and in North America with Oh Pretty Woman, being a top billing on the charts for both sides of that. So he was unaffected in some ways by the British invasion, which pretty much wiped out a lot of the other American bands, but he was he seemed to be immune to that. Anyways, once it got to the 70s, he started to struggle. The new types of music that were coming out made him feel somewhat lost. He didn't really know what to do, and so he kind of went into the background. It was kind of like his time was up, and so he started to fade. But then what happened, of course, we all know. He struggled through the 70s. At some point, his house burned down, and a couple of his sons died in the fire, and then the house got sold to, I think it was to, I believe it was to Elvis, and then Elvis had the house bulldozed. No, it was to Johnny Cash. That's who it was, Johnny Cash, and the house was bulldozed. But two of his boys died there. His youngest boy went to live with the grandparents. But at any rate, so the 70s weren't really all that kind to him. Once he got into the 80s, what happened was that he experienced something that a lot of 50s and 60s artists probably experienced, is they got a little bit of a comeback because a lot of people started wanting to re-record some of their music and put it out there. He had this happen to him. Some of his songs were re-recorded by other artists. The most notable for me was the Oh Pretty Woman, which was re-recorded by Van Halen in the 80s, and so he got royalties for that, which then again brought him back out into prominence a bit. People started wanting to hear his versions of the stuff, and at this point he used to play with Jeff Lynne, and sometimes even they started, like, when they record a song together, and then another guy came in and started helping them, and then they needed to borrow a studio, so they had Bob Dylan's studio, and so then George Harrison was in there as well, and then the next thing you know, and Tom Petty, and then they were the Traveling Wilburys. Then they decided to call themselves the Traveling Wilburys, and they did pretty successful stuff. Most of them are gone now, but they did do pretty successful stuff. But unfortunately it was short-lived because he had been complaining about chest pains for a while, and then after a concert he did, he took some time off, and he actually was at his mother's house and had a heart attack and died. So that was on December the 6th, 1988. So at the age of 52, which is very young, he passed away. The thing I noticed most about him was he developed a vocal style that was really well liked. He came out of his shyness, but he had an image too. He often dyed his hair black, greased back, wore all black clothing, and wore dark glasses because he had a problem with pop bottle glasses because he couldn't see very well. And I guess it was an image issue, and he became that image that he did, and his vocals seemed to suit it very well. So there you have it. Roy Orbison, one of the great Hall of Fame type rock musicians from the 50s and 60s who had a large amount of impact on a lot of people. People recorded a lot of his stuff, and he was a pretty significant writer. My personal feelings aside, I really don't care for his music too much, but I do respect the fact that he was a hard worker and put out a lot of stuff and did his own writing and developed his own image. So for that, I give him all 100% kudos. So there you have it. John Curulewski of Styx and Roy Orbison, I guess you would maybe say, of the Traveling Wilburys. Those are our two rock and roll greats who thrilled us, but since have passed on. So some of the other honorable mentions, I went through this list. I'm going to use my glasses because I wrote small and I can't really see my own handwriting too well. So there was Alexander Bashlychev, I think I got that right. He was a poet, writer, and a guitarist, Russian, of course. Dave Prater of Sam and Dave. John Banks of the Mercy Beats. Barbara Rubison of the Peanut Butter Conspiracy. They were a psychedelic band in the 60s. Paul Wilson of the Flamingos, which were, I think, a doo-wop group. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what they were. Hilla Slavic from the Red, and I don't know what this guy played or did, but he was with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and they're fairly well known, so I wanted to give him some knowledge as well. Robert Calvert of Hawkwind, of course, and Tim Daves of the Steve Miller Band. Tim was the drummer. I remember him quite well. So those are the honorable mentions, people who I wanted to bring up. Their past, they're gone, but they did contribute to the rock genre in general, and so I wanted to give them some kudos for that. So there you have it, episode 25 of Rock Favorites who thrilled us but have since passed on. I hope you enjoyed this video. The next one of this series, number 26 from 1989, the final year of the 1980s is upon us, and we go into the 90s after that, will come out Tuesday morning, and I hope you will come and watch that one as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. It always helps me out quite a bit when people do that. The other thing too is I know I had mentioned somewhere in one of my previous videos that I would be doing a live stream this weekend. Unfortunately, I didn't organize it very well, and I was unable to get the stream going the way I want it. So I'm going to work on that for a bit, and when it's ready, I will announce beforehand, and we will attempt to do another stream, which I will try to do once a month for this particular episode. And as soon as it's ready, I will let people know, and we'll try to do it again. So I apologize for that. I'm a bit of a novice in that area, so I need to work on that part. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and it's a beautiful evening. I hope you have a good evening, and Murph from Prog Monster, have a good night. Bye.